If you've ever drawn on the same layer by accident, I'll show you some of my best digital art hacks that I share with my students all the time to fix their most common mistakes. If you'd like a list of these hacks, plus how to use them in different programs like Krita, Photoshop, and Procreate, you can grab our brand new companion guide. Click the link below. You don't need to be a pro to understand how to use them, so I really encourage everybody to play around. If you've drawn on the same layer by accident, all you need to do is to make a correction layer, and specifically a level correction layer. And what you do is you adjust these bars at the top to turn up the brightness of the overall drawing. Then I'm gonna adjust this bar so that our line art is a lot more visible. Our goal here is for the background to be completely white. And just like that, we have our correction layer. And to make sure that this is a bright white, if I color pick it, you can see that it's the peak white. Now what we're doing here is we're setting up for the feature under edits, convert brightness to opacity. So just like the name says, the brighter a color is, the more transparent it is. We had that set up with the level corrections so that the brightness of the background is very bright, which will be converted to transparent, and then our sketch will be very dark, which will be converted to opaque. In other words, no change. You can see that it's back to normal, and I could draw underneath it just like a normal layer would be. And as another example, on the off chance that you accidentally merged it with a color layer, try to turn it black and white by right-clicking, new correction layer, hue and saturation, and then turning the saturation all the way down till it's gray. And then you repeat the steps that we talked about earlier. There are a million different colors that you could use for your artwork. It's an important skill to unify all these colors that you use to really improve your artwork. Luckily for you, there are many ways to unify your artwork with layer blending modes in Clip Studio Paint. Remember, it's not about which layer mode you use. What's important is the end result. Let's go over some of my favorite ones and how I use them. Every time I begin my paintings, I like to put down the base colors, which means putting down the basic colors before lighting and shadows. And one way I like to unify all these colors so that they look like they all fit together is with an overlay layer. So for example, I have Nikki, and I'll color pick the sky. And what I'll do is I'll make a new layer and turn it into a clipping layer so that it only affects Nikki. I'll put a nice coat of overlay and then turn down the opacity. What that did is it gave all the colors a touch of blue to them compared to before and after. If you'd like a list of these hacks, plus how to use them in different programs like Krita, Photoshop, and Procreate, you can grab our brand new companion guide. Click the link below. Now I'll do the same for Momo. I'll color pick that and I'll make a new layer on top, but overlay, give Momo the same treatment and turn it down just a little bit. And then I'll do the same for the background. You see these green plants, they stand out a lot. So what I will do is make an overlay layer, then I'll turn it down just a little bit. Overlay makes bright colors brighter and dark colors even darker, to put it simply. Here's a before and after. Before, it's a very vibrant green, and now there's like a touch of blue, making it slightly teal and fits in the overall color scheme. If you want to keep these changes, you could select both of the layers, right-click, and then merge selected layers. It does a great job of unifying the colors, letting the color you used on the layer and the layer it's affecting meet halfway. Now to add shadows, I love using the multiply layer. It's the perfect layer for adding shadows, and I think it's a must-know for every digital artist. For example, I'll add a multiply layer and have it clip on to Nikki. Just like with overlay, it does unify the colors by having one big shadow. You can adjust the saturation and brightness of the color you use to make it fit the atmosphere you want. And then you're able to carve out the lights by erasing parts of it. This is a really fun way of shading your artwork if it's very heavy on lighting and shadows. But also, you could do the complete opposite, where you have an empty layer, set it to multiply, and just simply draw in the shadows where they need to be. I'm gonna add a shadow underneath, right here, the parts where light does not reach. And of course, doesn't have to be limited to just one color. What I like to do is to lock transparency, and then maybe I'll go for like a more purple shadow, just like this. And then add a multiply onto her dress. And again, I'll make another shadow layer for the skirt. So you can see that I'm only using one multiply layer. It's just that in my layers, all my colors are in one layer, but in reality, you could use as many as you can. Just like with multiply, I'll have all the shadows in one layer. And another extra Iggy step that I like to do is I like to separate the sketch. So now we have 4 different layers. We have Momo on its own layer. We have the Whimstar, Nikki, and then the flowers. The reason why I separated them, because now I'll grab the Nikki sketch layer, then hit multiply on there, and then change the color of the sketch so that I could make it a part of the painting. Instead of picking a black line art, I wanted it to be like slightly more blue. Yeah, and you could see that's another freedom that these layers provide, is that having them on separate layers lets you adjust and change your mind midway through the drawing. You're open to customize and change stuff as you go. Now I feel comfortable merging them all together. So now Nikki is all in one layer. And then I'll be repeating this process pretty much all throughout with the other characters. I want to take this time to talk a little bit about folders, because you probably use them to organize your layers. But sometimes you may notice that they act a little bit differently. For example, I make a multiply layer on the inside, and I shade everything as normal, so it's affecting all the layers below it. But once it starts to bleed outside of the colors, you can see that the gray is not being affected. This is because the folders isolate them from the outside. So to fix this, simply have your folder be set to through mode so that it affects everything below it, even the stuff outside of the folder. Another nice thing I like to do with multiply is it's also really good for making your overall drawing feel brighter. For example, this Whimstar right here that I'm coloring, it's supposed to be really bright, and instead of adding super bright colors like white, I darken the shadows a little bit so that in comparison everything looks darker, and it's a nice setup when I use the other layer modes to really brighten everything up. I really love using these layer modes as a way to set up my colors, because it's very important as a painter to make all your colors work together and not just haphazardly add random colors just because you feel like it. Now, I've merged all my layers together, so it makes for a nicer experience when I'm painting. Yeah. And here's another use I like to apply with multiply, is if I feel like the skin's a little bit too pale, I use multiply to touch it up. Now this one looks a little bit overdone for now. And then use my lock alpha, then start to lighten up the skin. So here's like a before and then an after. Alright, while I'm here, I want to explain how I blend with my color picker. I have the shadow and I have the base color of the skin. So what I do first is I pick this and then I lightly press so that it's not the full color. So here's the comparison. This is if I press really hard, and then this one is the one I press really lightly. This is the color that mixes between skin color and the shadow. And so what I do is I color pick that one. And then that's what I start to apply onto her skin. And then I basically do that over and over to blend it. And here, since I have everything on one layer, I like to use the Liquify tool, specifically this mode, push, so that I could easily readjust like so. And I think it's a lot more convenient compared to using transform. The next layer I want to talk about is another one of my favorites, the glow dodge layer. It's a really nice way to add lighting into your drawings. It's comparable to add glow, which is in other softwares, but What really sets it apart is how it could create hot bright white if you concentrate the color enough on a spot. It also creates this nice saturated edge around it. Let me demo that. Make a glow dodge layer, and you can see that the edge is pretty saturated. Meanwhile, the middle is pretty hot white. And then if I concentrate it even more and more, it makes for this nice effect, you know? It's kind of like subsurface scattering in a way. Like around the edges, it's very saturated. The middle, it's very, very hot white. It's great for creating shiny glows, and it's really easy to control with soft brush. How I'll use it here is on Nikki. I'm gonna add a little bit of a blue glow coming from the Whim Star. I'll just use the airbrush. Take a look at this. If I press really hard, it'll make her really bright, but I'm doing it very subtly. If you want it to be a little bit more saturated, you know, you just have to change the color that you're using. Add like a hint of blue on her chest. But where it'll really shine is on the Whim Star. I'm gonna add a glow dodge layer on top and add a blue glow, specifically the parts where it's peaking. And then in case I want to change the color a little bit, so I'm picking a deeper color. There. And just a simple airbrush, I'm able to make the star glow. And then now, I'm gonna pick a brighter color and maybe make a second glow dodge layer. That'll be all around as like a little aura. Here's a before and an after. Let me flush out the background a little bit more by adding some sunlight to it. Then below the mountains, I'm gonna add some clouds. Again, I'm doing the same trick with my brush where I strike it because if I overdo it, it's super bright. So I color pick it, and that's the color I'll be using. Then I color pick again for the shadow. I don't introduce too many colors as I go. There you go. I made sure that these clouds are a little bit yellow so that it's reminiscent of sunlight illuminating the sky, not just a plain white. Now, what I'd like to do is have glow dodge and add a little bit of orange. Now I'm color picking the new colors that the glow dodge introduced and adding them in with my brush. I will add some shadows, multiply, add like a nice bluish shadow to it. Last but not least, I want to show the color layer. It's really useful to check your values with it, so that's the most important trick that I always do with it. So you scroll all the way down to color, pick the brightest white, and turn everything to black and white. This is going to be really helpful for the later parts once we start using the adjustments layers to change our colors a little bit. Now we can see how our colors look. And not only that, I mainly use it to help me with grayscale. And we have a video from before that I'd like to link, which completely focuses on that. Now that we've talked about layer blending modes, it's time to talk about correction layers. They give you the freedom to adjust your artwork's color, and it's useful for lighting and shadows. To make one, all you have to do is right-click a layer, and this menu should pop up, and it says New Correction Layer. And all you have to do is pick the one you want to do. And the nice part about it is, once you bring one, you could actually make it into a clipping layer, change its opacity, and really adjust it. If I want to change hue, for example, right there, if I turn it off, you can see it affects everything. I could turn it into a clipping layer and also adjust its opacity to see how intense it is, right? It also comes with a mask right here that you can freely erase and adjust anytime. I'll go over my favorite correction layers, ones I feel are most useful to know. So I want to start off with hue, saturation, and luminosity. I find myself going back to this when I need little adjustments. Say for example, I wanted to adjust the hair a little bit, or maybe even completely change the color right there. So I hit OK, and just like how I showed earlier, now we have a layer mask. So what I'll do is I will erase it by filling it with transparent there. And then I could paint it back in with some whites. Of course, you wouldn't need to do this part. Just like that, in a few seconds, I was able to adjust and change Nikki's hair color. If you had the hair on a separate layer, Not only that, just like with the showcase, you know, you could adjust the opacity, or if you want, you could turn it into a multiply layer, you could turn it into a color layer. So you could stack the stuff that we learned earlier to this. You could turn it into a glow dodge layer for some reason if you want it, or overlay. Any sort of layer mode you could use it for. And if you want to access it again, all you have to do is click on the correction layer, and you'll see the menu pop up. If, say, I wanted it to be darker with luminosity, or more vibrant and saturated with the saturation slider, feel free to change it as much as you'd like until you find adjustments that match what you want. Another one of my favorites that I use all the time is the tone curve. So this graph represents the output of colors. Specifically, you got red, green, blue, and all of them together. If you want to fine-tune all the reds, you just have to hit this tab and adjust it. With all of these correction layers, you don't need to be a pro to understand how to use them. So I really encourage everybody to play around. Just adjust your artwork till it matches your vibe. How it works is you add little points right here. What I like to do is raise it up, because going up means going brighter, and going down means going darker. If you want to get rid of points that you accidentally added, all you have to do is drag outside there and there. Get rid of all the points. So what I like to do is make 2 points. One that makes it brighter, and then makes it darker, like that. So it increases the contrast. So if I move left, it desaturates, and then if I move right, it saturates. It's kind of a fine-tuning, you know? I kind of want my colors to be darker overall. Make it just like that. Give it like a deeper curve instead of it being a straight line. So here's a before and after. Value-wise, it's a lot more contrast, you know? So here's a comparison in black and white. Let's see if we could push it a little bit more. Now I feel like it's a little bit too saturated, so I'll make another one, hue and saturation. Turn down this slider so that it's not too vibrant, like there. So here's a before and after. If you want your reds to be more vibrant, you could also change it right here. Change the channel to red. And just play around, see what it changes. Because now, take a look at this. Every time I lower red, it becomes a lot more blue, the artwork. Because we're reducing the amount of red that's popping out. And if I do the opposite, there. Now it's a lot warmer, because now I've raised all the red channels. Like that. Mix and match, and see what matches your vibe. And just as a little side note, you know, when I do that stuff and I merge it all in one layer, I like to make a copy before I merge it all together, just so I have a spare. So, and also so I could show the before and after. So here's after and before for the adjustment. I'm gonna touch up the Wimstar a little bit. I'm gonna do the same thing for Momo. Start to polish them up. So this is pretty much my workflow, and it's the same as how I did with Nikki. And you can see that the color picker is very, very essential. I literally cannot go without it. Yeah, so again, to reiterate, you can see that I'm not really adding any new colors. So that's the way I work with my layers. You know, I use the blending layer modes as a setup, like multiply, overlay, glow dodge, and then I use them to like decide the lighting and the shadows, and then afterwards I just take the time with my brush to sort of apply those and kind of clean them up. This is why I love working with just one layer, because it's a lot more simpler to work with this sort of workflow. Moving on to the next adjustment layer I want to talk about is the gradient map. So I really like the gradient map because it visualizes the colors, and you can adjust it in a really nice bar right here. And the left side is the darkest colors, and the right side is the brightest. So this is basically a graph where you could put down colors and assign them. So for example, if you want the darkest color in the canvas to be a certain color, you just have to click on this. So say like you want it to be like this blue. You could actually set the darkest and the brightest values with this. So if you want your darkest colors to be pitch black, you could totally do that. But if you want the darkest colors to be limited to this, then it won't be like a pitch black. It'll have like a touch of blue to it. On the other side, you know, you could leave your brightest color to be white, but also maybe you could set it to something more red, more pinkish. You could add another tick at the bottom here to decide what the middle color is going to be. This correction layer is a really fun one to play with, so I really recommend that you play around and try to plop in colors to see what you can make. This is great to use for coloring your grayscale drawings and letting you adjust as you like by sliding the colors and see how they look. So say for example, you want the colors to be brighter, then of course you move these darker colors to like a smaller space. Or on the other hand, if you want a darker range, you could move a little bit more to the right. You can see that there's a lot more space for the darker colors. And again, to get rid of these arrows, extra arrows that you make, all you have to do is drag down to pull them off the bar. And then you could start to color it in with this mask. So first thing I did was erase it, and now you could touch it up by adding it back in with the layer mask. So just like that, from a black and white drawing, I'm able to add a lot of color to it. And then if I wanted to do it again with the skin, so I'll add a gradient map. I always like to start with the mid-tone, and for the shadow, maybe something a little bit more purple. You can check out Jesse's video for more gradient map tips. Gradient maps are powerful, giving you full customization of your colors, but personally, I rarely use it. I like painting the colors in myself with overlay and color layers. So you could also like exaggerate the colors to see what it's affecting. So now I know that this part that I'm circling right now is affecting the shadows. So now I'm gonna pick a little bit of a less intense shadow. So right now, I'm only focusing on the skin because that's the part I want to change. Now let's do it again. I erase the mask. I start to add it back in with white. It's a lot of fine-tuning, and as long as you focus on just one part at a time, it'll be a lot more manageable. You can see that this is a very nice skin tone that we have. So the next one I wanted to talk about is the color balance slider. So just in case you feel like some colors need adjusting, you know, they need to be warmer, they need to be cooler, this one is a lot more convenient compared to hue, saturation, and value because you're able to target the shadow, the halftone, and the highlight. So for example, if I feel like the shadows, you know, they need to be a little bit cooler, I just lean a little bit closer onto the blue. And then also maybe a little bit more closer to magenta. And then the highlight, maybe I want it to be a little bit warmer, so I'll lean closer to red. And then in case you regret your changes, you know, you want it set to default, just hit 0 on all of these so that you can manually change it. So yeah, let's see a before and after. So here's before, and then here's an after. Level correction. Now this one is a layer mode that we talked about earlier on how to fix drawing on the wrong layer. And I want this one to only affect the mountains here. So this correction layer focuses more on the brightness and darkness of the colors and changes the saturation of the artwork. I like to use this hand in hand with other correction layers mentioned before for nicer results. So say for example, these mountains, right, they're pretty dark, and I want them to be a little bit lighter. So what I do is I take a look at output. What this means is that this is the colors. This is the limits. Or the darkest the color can get is pitch black. And the brightest the color can get is this white. So if I want to lower the darkness, all I have to do is move it to the left. So now this means that the darkest possible color is gray. It can never ever reach the pitch black right here because we moved it. Then the same for here. You know, if you move a little bit to the left, it becomes a lot brighter. But then vice versa, you know, if we move it to the right, it becomes a lot darker. Just like that. So now it looks a lot more lively. There we go. And you know, an honorable mention for me is Posterization. Right there. Basically what it does is it reduces the amount of colors being used. And like the name says, it's kind of like a poster, you know, kind of like the posters you'd see in backgrounds of video games or TV shows. And it's very perfect for deep frying your drawings. It's just a fun filter, correction layer. And low-key, it is kind of nice though for separating your layers into like simple blobs. So take a look at this. I'm going to reduce the levels. Look at that. It's kind of a satisfying effect if it wasn't so messy. So to have some saturation, I'm going to use this one. At the end of the day, your personal taste is what will make your artwork great. There you go. So before, after. Okay, so the next one I want to mention is the Symmetrical Ruler. So you could easily add it with the ruler tool, and then picking the Symmetrical Ruler here, you could click on Tool Property, and then you could adjust how many axes you want your Symmetrical Ruler to be. And for the sake of it, you know, I'm just gonna have it at 2. So I'll use that to make a nice balcony sort of pattern, or like guard railing made of stone. So there's lots of ways you could do it. You know, you could draw a fractal pattern for clothes, for architecture, and more. Or you could use it to draw a front-facing anime character if you wanted. Sky's the limit. And then copy-paste, but this time there's 2 of them. So yeah, this should be good enough. So I'll copy this and paste it. Then on this one, I'll make another layer. Probably add some vines to it. There you go. That's a nice way to implement a architecture piece into your drawing using the Symmetrical Ruler. One thing I really want to go over as well is the brush settings. To access your brush settings, all you need to do is pick the brush you like, and then go to the Tool Properties tab. So it should look like this, where you have like a bunch of sliders, you can adjust stuff. And then you hit this tiny wrench down here to expand the menu and to see more of the details. Now there's a lot of customization with the brushes, and I really love Clip Studio for that. And if you want to see more and learn how to delve into these options, let us know in the comments if that's a video you want to see. So an essential thing about my brush is that it mostly uses opacity and it doesn't blend or blur the ink. So what I do is I go onto the ink tab. Then on the left of these options, there's like this little square. It could be empty or have an eye in it. So this one, as you can see here, lets you activate and toggle what options you could see. In my case, to have the option of opacity, I turn this on, color mixing, and all the settings that go with it. Because at the moment, I'll show you the comparison of what it is with the option off. So I like to use just opacity, because as you can see, it just layers on top of each other, like that. And so if I were to put 2 colors maybe, there, you can see that the edges aren't blended at all, so it's kind of just layering on top of each other. But on the other hand, if I had turned on color mixing right here, there, it spreads the color the same way it would with watercolor. I have to press really lightly to get this effect. Here's another thing. With the color mixing off, now the colors can easily layer on top of each other. But if I turn on color mixing, see, I'm selecting blue right now, but you can see that I gotta press really, really hard to get that blue out. Now, in case you want to keep those settings that you made, what you could also do is hit the wrench button, and then you could hit this button to save all the settings you made as the default. Join a virtual art class to learn live from our professional artists. Get creative assignments, individual guidance, and real-time feedback on your artwork. Start today and level up your practice. If you learned something new, please like and share this video with a fellow art nerd. If you love receiving quality and free arts education, subscribe. Here's a couple other videos you could check out next.